Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Man's Noble Beer Reviews. Today I have another beer from High Branch Brewing Company out of Concord, North Carolina. This beer is called Gone to the Bad. See there it says a Brett IPA. The description on the back says Brett IPA with whole cone, North Carolina Centennial hops, and North Carolina lemon balm, which is like an herb. And it is 7.8 ABV. I haven't heard of. I mean, this isn't old. It's like a month and a half old, which for a Brett IPA really isn't like isn't old at all because hops hold up with Brett a lot longer. I haven't heard anything about this at all from anybody. But I know they don't still have it for sale there anymore, so I'm assuming they sold out of it. But I have not heard any reviews for this at all. I didn't want to look at Untappd or anything beforehand. You know, I didn't want to get any bias or anything like that. So I'm going into this completely fresh. I didn't have it on tap or anything. So we'll see what we got here. And I don't think I've had a bunch of sour beers from these guys. I've had a bunch of IPAs. I've had sour IPAs, you know, with lactobacillus, but I don't think they might have done one Brett IPA before. I don't know that they bottled any, at least though. So this is definitely kind of a new realm for them, which interests me because I like Brett IPAs a lot. Sour lacto IPAs not as much, but Brett ones, yes. So it's definitely not a hazy IPA at all, which is fine. It is slightly cloudy. Nice. It's a lighter golden color. I mean, it's almost straw. It's pretty light with a small rocky white head, which I would expect from a beer with Brettanomyces in it. That smells pretty nice. And I will say Centennial would not be my first go-to if I was making a Brett IPA. I'm not saying it was a bad choice, and I'm sure it's going to turn out well. But I generally you see with Brett IPA something with like a very juicy tropical hop, and they use Brett C because that kind of has like a pineapple-y character to it as well. So I'm pretty intrigued to see how this plays out with a more traditional hop. It has a really nice, you know, general Brett Barney character. It doesn't say what Brett strain is in this, but it does have a little bit of that like cherry pie character, which is also something that's in Brett C. So I wonder if that's what's in this. I mean, there's probably several different strains. I don't know. I mean, I do get a little bit of like an earthy floral hop character, but it's not very pungent. It definitely smells more like Brett than hops. So I'm kind of torn with this because I think this tastes very good. I like it a lot. But calling it a Brett IPA to me is kind of misleading because the hop flavor is almost non-existent. You know, if you're just saying it's a Brett beer that's made with these fresh hops, that's fine. But there's not even close to enough hops in this for me that I would consider this an IPA. And I'm sure that was the base, but you know it doesn't. Brett ferments out even quicker than Saccharomyces did or does. It's not like you know this was an IPA and then it had some sort of long-term mixed culture fermentation where the hops fell off, which still would not normally happen because of the Brett, because it eats up all the oxygen, which oxidizes the hops and degrades them. Like there's nothing about this that makes me think that this was ever an IPA. Because I would love to taste what this was like before it was inoculated or fermented with Brett. I don't know if it was like 100 ferment. I don't know if this was secondary fermentation with Brett or 100% primary fermentation with Brett. I'm not sure. But there's just nothing about this that's an IPA. So I don't like that about it. But I'm not going to rate it based on that. I'm just going to rate it on flavor. But I will say I don't like that about that because to me that's pretty misleading. For me, that's fine because I love Brett beers and I love IPA. So I knew whichever end of the spectrum it was on, I was going to like it either way as long as it was made well, and it is. Excuse me. But people that aren't super familiar with Britannomyces might have bought this because they saw it was an IPA. They're going to drink this and be like, what the heck is this? I mean, if it's pretty loaded with hops and then it has all the funky Brett stuff behind it, they might like it because it's a different take on an IPA, but it's still hoppy. But this really isn't at all. Anyways, that's my rant on that. Stepping away from the IPA name, it's a really nice beer. It's so weird because it's like the Brett. It seems like the Brett stripped out all of like the malt flavor, where the flavor profile is almost all like Barney Brett character. But there's like a little bit of sweetness on the back end, which is kind of weird because Brett usually dries the crap out of like everything. And of course you can kill it, but I'm assuming this is probably bottle conditioned and it's not pasteurized. But I really do wish there was more hops in this because I feel like if it was, it would be fantastic. Because the Brett character is like at the forefront, but it's also not super pungent. It's kind of like whatever there's not much underneath it, and I feel like if it had those hops, this would be like a really nice bright beer. It does almost have like a little bit of minerality to it too, which is cool because you don't usually get that like just from Brett beers. It's usually something with like mixed culture with Brett, lacto, and maybe pedia or whatever. But those things all mixed together, you get those from like mixed culture saisons. But I actually getting a little. I am getting a little bit of that out of this, but it just doesn't have any of the acidity at all. Like anyone that thinks Brett supposedly produces a very, 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 very small amounts of acid, but it's not anything detectable by most people. So if you know people who have that misconception that Brett makes something sour, this is not sour at all. It's very dry, and I like it a lot, but it's kind of one note, really. It's just if you have to really like Brett because that's pretty much all it tastes like. But I'm fine with that because I like Brett a lot. On my scale of buy, drink, dump, I'm just gonna give this one a drink. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it's labeled a Brett IPA and there's like no hop flavor. It's more along the lines of this is like a really simple Brett beer. And I don't remember what this cost, but it costs something along the lines of, whatever would normally be in these 500 milliliters, like their sour stuff. I don't think it was quite that expensive. I don't think it was like $15. It was probably like 11 or 12. But even that for a 500 milliliter, like, Brett isn't more expensive than Saccharomyces, especially if you're using it regularly and buying it in bulk. And well, actually, it is more expensive, but not by that much. And like I said, the hop level with this is pretty small, so it's not like they dumped a ton of hops in this either. So I kind of, I'm just thinking of other like Brett beers, like Orval, or I mean that's a completely different level, obviously, but or like Rayon Vert from Green Flash. I know they're basically like out, non-existent anymore, but just other like Brett beer. There's really few and far between, to be honest, to find like Brett beers that aren't mixed cultured or like true Brett IPAs or just with weird stuff in it. It's hard to find like pretty simple Brett beers, but when you do, they're usually not very expensive. So that's the only reason I'm just giving this a drink. I wouldn't buy it again because there's nothing too unique about it that would make me want to spend in the double digits for something like this one. I feel like I could just make something like this at home by pitching bread into like a Pilsner malt base or something like that. So I'm just gonna give this a drink, but it's still a pretty good beer. So if you like Brett stuff, definitely it's worth a try. I would say you might like it more than me and get a little bit more depth out of it than I am. It's worth a try, but I would not buy it again. So that's all I got of this one. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I look forward to doing the next one. Thanks.